made or will not.
Road of straight talk here. Good afternoon. Sure did. I have got please good. That's what I'm hoping. It could be mother. Just covered that. We're not going to go over old territory. But other than planning our haircuts, that's really the only kind of planning that goes on. We're 26. If 26 are either sending us a WhatsApp audio note or for line with conversation. Anyway, caution eaves on this fact that don't actually.
I think it was done a class sort of splitting up of supposed to be DEH that deals. They can just go ahead and write you a ticket just like they do for abhorring the track. Beautiful place. Quiet, Austin. I want to pull over kinds of views. So I go to pull over and one little spot that's on my way going there, and oh my God. I mean, I've never in my life seen, but I mean, how difficult is it, first of all, to just put the trash in the car and go to a garbage can and throw it away? I mean, it's really disgusting. And we want Cayman Islands to be beautiful, don't we?
Yeah, we absolutely do. We absolutely do. Speaking of those little mobile lunch spots where you pull over, I've always, now they've been across the street, across the street where the vendor spot is, if nobody is there. But talk about your phenomenal ocean views. And some nice breeze.
Well, there was touch where
they were piece of free area, particularly
under the beach, and my parents will all be listen. And
if we reason this out on the basis of our lifetime, Caymanians are less ingrained to litter because obviously it's our home and we care about it, and therefore we're less likely to throw our trash in as it may have been when you and I were growing up. And we're 8 times that. We're 88,000 today. Over 130 different nationalities. Problem, but maybe those who come and visit us from far away.
Well, without a doubt. I mean, I don't have much, core forget. Wow.
We were talking about their people. One spot, we cursed me all kind of thing when you could hear the people, and he chased us down in the car but I want him jump out, and this wasn't gonna be alarming Lynn that thing because I want him jump out, and this wasn't gonna be alarming Lynn that thing because I would have bust his mouth up.
What, you say the person chased you down?
He chased me down, cursing me because I tell him, I say, you should get out and pick that up. And I tell him I wish he cursed me all kind of thing. You wait head lady? He said, I say yes, and I live to get my hair get white. But you ain't, I say yes, and I live to get my hair get white. But you ain't gonna live, I say, because you're a nasty old slum stuff. He that old, so. And if you think that I can't handle you, you get out here and I'll show you how old I am. Yeah. And then he's driving, man. Yeah, he cursed me all kind of stuff. That up, and they were right on this Newlands Road up, man. I tell him, I say, clean this. And I sit there and I pay. He said, by the zone and the road, by the road.
All right.
Even if they hit the road.
All right.
Even if they hit a chicken grouse and pick it up and put it in plastic. Mommy, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, right on my ticket.
Not that we know of.
Oh, my.
There was no further update there, but caller, thank you so much.
I young lady, and she like me, she will approach him and she say, I'm throwing it.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased to be able to just simply write a ticket.
Yes.
Ticket, whatever it is. And I guarantee
as emergency vehicles to carry lights, on other than those who are already authorization or dispensation to do so.
Yeah, so
dispensation to do so.
Yeah, so again, from the little bit that I understand, and I stand to be corrected, I haven't read through all the laws myself, but my understanding is that the specifics in somewhat of a large of a, the guy just threw a Coke bottle in the bush. But either way, in the absence of all the specifics there, we do understand that at the minimum, the police officers would have to engage in a significant amount of paperwork, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's make their jobs a little bit easier. There are persons in my area that was constantly throwing trash. I kept videoing it because I like to clean my side of the road in that area, clean cars or other stuff, and they throw their trash. Then I went over and actually started asking me how it's. After about 45 minutes, the police showed up. And they had to apparently talk to him in private, couldn't do it in front of me. But nevertheless, this individual, and I can tell you where he threw the fire there, I don't know. And I remember calling the police station, and they told me something to the effect that, they said that. And so to me, a big part of this problem with not one, you need to be able to do that, and you might be able to stand a chance to fix the problem.
Indeed. I just received notice from one of our listeners or viewers that issue. But again, the listener feedback, and I can't feed confirmation that it's being looked at right now. So I want to thank the listener, for sharing those details with us. 56 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. Since I want a local game called Pullover. Obviously, a game linked to speeders, the number of road fatalities, and otherwise bad traffic. And on Friday at 4:30, right here at Straight Talk, we're going to have the creator as our guest in studios and sharing more details about the fantastic 15 seconds for take up his new role on the 1st of June. Mr. Patrick Smith will replace Sue Winspear, who, as persons will know, ended her him for the role.
So we're very, very happy about that. Absolutely, 100%. Congratulations, Mr. Patrick Smith, on that appointment.
Indeed. 59 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock. We're going to pause, take a short commercial break, but keep it locked. There's going to be more Straight Talk, Nate Talk, next.
Bobo.
BBC News. BBC News.
Wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the Beaver. It's happening. Catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our
To Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world. Reporters around the world from the BBC and the world better.
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon
Of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. The home of the BBC World Service. This is
At Health Service.
This is
At Health Service. Range of them.
0.1 FM online and on
Range of them.
0.1 FM online and on.
That Mr. Trump said of white farmers was taking place has been he had come to Washington to discuss trade.
Try to improve place in his country. He had also collected newspaper stories about the murder of white farmers. President Ramaphosa looked extremely uncomfortable as he tried to keep calm in the face of the accusations, including
Government's military expansion in Gaza and the limited supply of aid into the Palestinian territory. In a press conference, he said the fighting would
clear them of terrorist and Hamas terror infrastructures. At the end of this process, all areas of the Gaza Strip will be under Israeli security control.
Private companies were given for accountability from Israel after Israeli soldiers fired shots near an international diplomatic delegation visiting the occupied wing from a previously agreed route. South America on Sunday, but oil reserves. They're worried for the safety of a Kenyan activist and a Ugandan lawyer who've been missing.
News of Stingray Media. Defamatory or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Defamatory or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626.
Our Facebook streaming video is a little spotty at the moment, and we discovered during the break from our technical staff internet. It is just running on our own internal text.
Being off completely. Being
Internet responsibility, integrity, the Auditor General, in you. That's why I paused. I figured General in you. That's why I paused. I figured there was.
It just.
That's why I paused. I figured there was.
It just always concerns me, Austin. When they deputize a Caymanian right now, it just wasn't long after that we heard Kay was pulling out. Anyway,
excuse distribution. Going out. Going outside. Promoting from with as well.
I listening to
lines are attached to the internet as well. Because whilst we await that.
I say okay.
Internet as well. Because whilst we await that.
I say okay. Get on the airways and I shoot Staru or Statu or Onion. You're a paper holder. That my consider. And I got Stardust and I can't. And now when you burn in a country, I consider. I say my two kids are Caymanian. My husband is Caymanian, but I am not a Caymanian by birth. I am a I can beat that out of my head, but they say that's the piece of onion. That's the piece of onion.
The immigrant Caymanians either born. The immigrant Caymanians either born or those persons who've come here and received it vis-a-vis one of the here and received it. vis-a-vis one of the application processes of either, although she has I dare anyone to say
things. It's a child sort of things came up because I had a lot of persons who said, yeah, but what, it should be born Kimanian. And it is a challenging issue, and it's one that I think the country needs to be able to have all these community meetings. We talked about this new piece of law that was thrown out there for discussion. We need to have community meetings so that we can all sit and decide exactly how we want to do it. But as I've said, to me, I also will acknowledge that there are some persons that to me have come to this country and has made a wonderful contribution, and I think loves the country and really calls it their own. And some persons will also hear me saying that, so treat it as if, and as I have no issue with that. But for those who think that they can come here and decide how can I put it? I can build in the mangroves, but you can't build there, and I can do this, but you can't do it. And that's what's going on, and that's the part that gets me very upset. In terms of this particular individual, I don't think that the caller was definitely trying to point a finger to mar the situation in relation to this individual promotion, but making a general manium.
Indeed.
But I do, this is why when you police, that was not the case. Now, we have a new commissioner of police who's now Caymanian, but bear in mind now the UK has their regiment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They now control the regiment. So I guess they're decided now, and ask yourself, maintains its control over this country through whatever arguably allowed Caymanians to occupy. Even, for example, on the anti-corruption law, the two persons that are supposed to cry foul speaking. That's
the current commissioner of police
and the auditor general.
A Caymanian at the moment. The police in general still fall under the remit of Her Excellency the Governor, internal security, and to your point, likewise, the regiment also falling under the Governor, albeit that the political arm does in fact approve and not approve funding for that were to occur, then the Governor would use their special powers to move it along. But yes, to your point, traditionally see that there is, slow progress being made to change that.
These are positions to which...
Right, indeed. And speaking of the police, in the headlines today now, obviously since last week, we've been taking a look at crime stats for the country. They were released last week, Thursday, and we talked about them, I think, in broad detail. But there's an increase in sex crimes being recorded in sexual offenses, exposure leading crime and traffic statistics. So again, crime increased by 7% in 2024 compared to 2023. Sex offenses were again up 21%. Serious violent up 21%. Serious violent crime general close to half. The overall detection rate numbers are good, bad, or global, and rate of crime clearly much higher than any of us. Which have seen they receive, and that off the credit. These are the four persons through a private member's motion, I believe. The government reduced the legal blood limit, alcohol limit, from pointing the opportunities for police to find persons who are drinking while driving. First year, these statistics were available. This year, the police made 281. So there was a decrease by one instance.
But hold on a second here. If I get this right, wrap this around my level. That was required in your blood in order to be arrested and charged with DUI. That amount was reduced. And a year limit has choice to drink and drive. Why isn't that a positive? Even means that theoretically you should be arresting 300 plus.
Right.
So in reality, as I see it, it is a positive thing.
All right.
As I see it, it is a positive thing.
All right.
The fact that you got the same number, means that, and though you have a wider...
But to the contrary, if I know for a fact every Friday and Saturday night I'm going to run through at least one roadblock at 20
More Straight Talk with Offben and Ellio coming. Straight Talk with Offben and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 10.
Your level of care on all three organizations.
A wise decision. What to do? Call Hughes Cleaning Service. Expert cleaners will make your office a healthy, immaculate, impressive workspace. Call 949-0734. Visit hughes-janitorial.com. Hughes, you get more than clean.
When it comes to cooking for my family, I turn to Kirk Market for all our nutritional needs. Whether whipping up a quick stir fry with lean CAB choice beef or preparing a healthy weekend dinner with fresh local snapper, Kirk Market always has exactly what I need. At Kirk Market, I find premium proteins that keep my family healthy, energetic, and always coming back for seconds. Visit Kirk Market today. Bring home the quality and fresh.
We've noticed you've been going to
The KFC, what a deal menu starting at Road and in the Strand. Pricing, right?
As a leading local insurer for over 25 years, Highland Heritage has a consistent track record of providing best-in-class customer service with quick and efficient claims processing. This means insurance.com today to land.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.4. If it's made or any harm claim, it will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's
your radio dial, program, and again, they're all tied to internet, so really I don't know what we can do about it. But if the problem does get worse, either by 562, the least 7% arrests. Now, an interesting statistic that we didn't share prior to the break is this. Of those arrested last year, 67% were found to be double the new drinking and driving limit, and 25% were said to be 3 times or more.
Sorry, give me that again.
67% were found to be more than double the DUI drinking, found to be more than double the DUI drinking and driving limit, and 25% were found to be 3 times or more. 25% were found to be 3 times or more over the limit. And again, that's the new limit of 0 current to encourage persons not to drink and drive. I say again, if you can do it at Christmas time, if you can do it at New Year's Eve, then why can't you do it during the rest of the year? Why should roadblocks be a secret, but in fact a norm, expectation, and maybe that simple one little fact may change your mind about, should I drink and drive tonight? Should I get behind the wheel? And while I'm at it, maybe, should I speed tonight? Horses are the reason why they don't do it now. But again, we use the example at Christmas and New Year, same staff can do it then why can't we? Just saying.
There's 2 pennies.
Just saying.
Why is it always 2 pennies anyway?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I think.
Yeah, you wanted to comment. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
you could discuss it until the cows come home. But just to throw it out. I mean, first of all, the cows come home. But just to throw it out. I mean, first of all, I want to give clarity on what I was saying when you talk about the number. You've got 100 people in the room, and let's just make it 50-50.
Yeah.
If the limit was that if you drank 5 beers, you were over the in trouble, it's just 3 beers to get you in problems. And so you now have this room with 100, 50 is drinking 3 beers and the other 1 person, despite the fact that you've made it that you can arrest a much larger group. Yeah. Because now you're no longer persons who are drinking 3 beers. Mm-hmm. So if you are still getting the number of 50, it's actually an improvement.
Okay.
And like I said, it's not necessarily the audience for arrest is wider, but you haven't made any real additional arrest.
Yeah.
And in fact, you're down by 1. So I think it is a promising thing. And you talking about the whole issue about the roadblocks, definitely, I think you can have roadblocks. And I kind of got used to seeing them quite regularly on Linford Pearson Highway. Yeah. But you're saying it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And again, forget Christmas and New Year's. Remember COVID?
Mm-hmm.
There were
police
presence, increased police presence to manage curfew. It wasn't always just the RCIPS. They, took to, obviously their vehicles to be recognized as emergency vehicles with sirens and lights and whatnot. So they might as well not to be overly critical. But if we hear last week from the police that resources are a problem behind the crime stats, suggesting that as promising in terms of the global perspective. Our crime rate with the rest of the world is still considered the best in the world. But locally, when we look at violent crime increasing by 68%, sexual offenses increasing by 21%, overall crime increasing by 7%, locally, those aren't good numbers. But if resources are your problem, and there have been occasions when you've drawn additional resources from within the same umbrella or net, if you will, of internal border security, which includes Customs and Border Control, which includes the regiment, and Fire Service held also similar recruitments. And if you listen to social media, everybody and their uncle turned out because they want to be fire officers, which is a good thing. I'm encouraged by that. Again, these are vocations where traditionally you see a fire, the human reaction is to run in the opposite direction. You got to give your hats off, take your hats off to firemen who obviously run towards the fire. We need people like that in our community to protect and serve. And as I pull myself away, anyway, I'll fix that when I come back.
Okay.
I'm tied up in my headphone here.
I see.
But, you need those services. So we do that job. And I'm grateful for those who, wear the badge, that stand on that proverbial wall whilst I sleep at night to keep me and my family safe. But if we had more bodies there, and again, you've done it before, so you can theoretically do it again. But if we're also concerned with, DUIs and changing the legislative offense further to 0.05%, but we put greater presence on the road. I am still convinced, and somebody's going to have to tell me otherwise, going down. Instinctively, you're making sure your seatbelt is on. Instinctively, you're making sure that Bluetooth is connected when you're on the phone and not in your hand. So clearly, if that happens instinctively, then imagine what greater presence in general.
The lights are indeed a deterrent.
Exactly. So I'll leave it to you while I try to disconnect myself.
Well, I have mentioned before what we have learned and what we actually took place that I think we can learn from. If you talk about the whole issue about the regiment, again, without the legislation in front of me, I would imagine that there takes on the normal sort of peace and thing that like a state. In the COVID, there was never, as far as I'm aware of, a formal announcement that we were under a state of emergency. And it's a wonderful and interesting situation because we were acting and instruments were acting as if there was a declared state of emergency when in fact it was not. So even if you look at the curfew situation, the curfews that were being held and then the length of time that they were being held, all of these things arguably could not have existed. Leverage, if you like, given to the administration during that period of time. And I think it's because in large part, the majority of people in this country are very, agreeable, amenable, understanding that we were in a very difficult circumstances and everybody wanted what was best for there were a lot of things that were being done that were, how can I put it, somewhat outside the confines of the normal pieces of legislation. So I would imagine the regiment, a group of guys walking around potentially with machine guns, and the list goes on, is not on the normal circumstances and requires a state of emergency or something to that effect to trigger their activation.
You may be absolutely correct. And if that is the case, well, we stand to be corrected. But what do you think? 745-2626 is the number. We'd love to hear your thoughts or some feedback on these points.
And while you're saying that, Mr. Harris, just to interrupt really quickly, two things. One, we know we had a lady call by 2626, and we were also talking about trying to solicit the public on this airport expansion. Yes. This is a real opportunity. The government legitimately wants to hear from you on it.
You read my mind.
So, there you go again. Not
That's
just
where
the blue
I was
shirt.
going to next. But certainly to your point, yesterday we started the conversation about the planned airport expansion. And, of course, the government of the day, and in particular details, particularly in yesterday's Cayman Compass, in terms of, where you need to go and who you need to speak to if you want to submit a formal fee, either for or against the proposed infrastructure upgrades to the Cayman Islands airports, which include all three airports, Owen Roberts International here in Grand Cayman, Charles Colonel International Airport in Cayman Brac, and the Edward Bodden Airfield in Little Cayman. At the moment, just the bare minimum is being proposed, but master plan and business case or outline business case document where you can read in greater detail what these plans include. I have been reading it, although I haven't gotten to all 277 riveting pages, but I've gotten a gist of it. So what is being proposed is bare bones, represent several hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. Obviously, yesterday we laid out both the pros and cons, the pros being tourism, vitally important to the economy of the Cayman Islands, not just in terms of government revenue, but the jobs it creates and the entrepreneurial opportunities that it creates. But like all things development, there are risks. There are environmental risks. There are perhaps from the cruise infrastructure proposal that received an adamant no at the referendum, is that unlike cruise, which could vary for the project, this is, I think, and I'm going to assume here, the reason why the project in its full expanded terms have not been ruled out and proposed by the government, because they recognize that it is a financially restrictive program to launch, and to do it all at one time is outside our ability to resource and fund. But the distinct difference is we'd be paying for it regardless whether small or large, unlike perhaps the cruise argument. Again, the government has asked for your feedback, and we want to assist them in this endeavor. So if you have a comment one way or the other, 745-2626 is the number. We'd love to hear from you. And again, yesterday I threw out the little caveat, if you will, that I'm curious, call it an experiment of my own, to see whether or not the eco-activists who largely were responsible for the referendum results, and they suggested some other people who may have been for it were fear-mongering, but I humbly argue, so verbal project, the threats are almost identical, albeit that it has been stipulated quite clearly that there will be dredging involved in the airport expansion, where under the cruise berthing initiative, dredging never entered the conversation. Albeit, again, but 745-2626 is the number. If you have an opinion one way or the other, we'd love to hear from you on this point.
And again, just to give you a little bit of a general description, to be able to accommodate the transatlantic flights between, here, say, in Europe, just as an example. I think there's also Central and South America or something as well. But you're talking about extending the runway. They did consider whether that should move westward towards the Cricket Oval, but that has been rejected. And that has been rejected from the standpoint that you don't want to necessarily disrupt those the area of traffic there that goes along the west side of the airport. So the plan is to stretch out into the north sound. Again, for clarity, that's that big C shape out there. They plan to extend out there approximately 2,100 feet and cover an area. And again, I will stress that this would most likely be a situation where this is completely filled in, if you like, with rocks, et cetera, et cetera. And a total, I think, of 20 plus just a little bit over 20 acres.
Yes, 22 acres.
22 acres approximately. And so 2,100 feet out, 20 acres or 22 acres. And that's enough so that the planes can land, go out there, and then, do their beeline, turn around and come back in and dock up next to the terminal.
Yes.
So that is, in a very dirty summary, what the government is proposing. And as my colleague and I mentioned yesterday, it is very much a mirror, if you like, to what was being proposed in relation to cruise infrastructure, bigger planes. In this particular case, I think many of you have seen British Airways.
Yes.
So British Airways lands here, but it can't take off with full fuel. They could take off with full fuel, and it is arguably be interesting to see is going to be rejecting it. And I want to harp on that. There was that little saying, you remember, I don't remember exactly how it went, but I know it ends to the point of who pulls you out of the SHIT is your friend.
Yes.
When I talk about some of these self-professed and self-proclaimed owners of the private island. One of our callers this afternoon talked about being from Honduras. But let's use Honduras, Philippines, or some country that we could consider to be, let's just put it this way, a little bit more financially challenged than Cayman Islands. It is very easy to see that you could go to a country like that you want to do certain development. In other words, You want to go to Honduras, you want to go to the Philippines, you want to build lots of buildings, you want to build lots of homes and sell them. And on the other side, well, then you would be doing your best to lobby in that country for the opportunity to develop. And of course, you're not going to go amongst them. But at the end of the day, passed within the Honduran government that is going to accommodate you in terms of doing those developments. Now, will the people benefit? Yes, there might be some benefits, some residual benefits, but it's not necessarily 100% that you're doing it for them. You're really doing it for you. I've done all that back home. I don't want that now. And again, you would be lobbying and going on the same argument that, you know, we need to save Honduras and keep the environment clean and prestige. And again, will there possibly be some benefits? Yes. But in large part, you're really doing it about yourself. These sort of things have occurred. One of the examples comes to mind. Persons that go there and think that it's their own private island and do certain things that disadvantages the indigenous population. So just for clarity, I hope that helps to clarify it a little bit, that I see some of that same thing happening in Cayman. You have some persons, not all. As I've mentioned, I love to see people come here with lots of suitcases, wanting to make it their home and really caring about Caymanians and our culture. But you have some persons that displaced just the way their financial means indigenous population. I have a problem with that. Because you see, if I'm sitting in Cayman and I have $30 million, I can bring construction to a halt. Caymanian that needs to build a house and needs to start a business and everything else, it's disadvantageous to them. So hopefully that adds a little bit of clarity to what I mean when I talk about some of these self-proclaimed owners of this wonderful fantasy island. Welcome to Fantasy Island, Tattoo, the private island called Cayman Island.
I was actually thinking about your dung joke in terms of, you know, how the saying goes. I think it stems from a joke. Let's see. A little bird was flying south while the bird was lying on the ground. Frozen bird lay there in the crap. He soon realized how warm he felt.
Right.
And of course, that warmth made him happy.
Correct.
So he there came a crap is your friend.
Yeah.
And when you're full of crap, it's best to keep your mouth shut.
So in this particular case, I would just be encouraging that, again, not everything that seems like someone's putting a dump on you is necessarily against you.
Yeah.
And not everyone who seems to be helping you is, in fact, your friend.
Indeed.
So that was the
mention again today. It's also, call it my person, the founder of the Sustainable Cayman movement, and who was very vocal on the
CPR
against the cruise infrastructure, is also the same person who sits as chairman of the board for the Cayman Islands Airports Authority. And whilst he stood opposed to cruise infrastructure by the airport expansion project, though I will add, you know, it would be curious, maybe not to hear from him on this show, because sometimes, like that little birdie, you know, some folks you just rather not hear from. There'll be more Straight Talk next.
Bobo. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source.
News from the BBC.
And this is Bobo 103.1.
From the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News. World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Happening wherever it's happening.
This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are a range of inpatients.
0.1 FM online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue. That Mr. Trump said supported his claim that white farmers in South Africa were being persecuted. The footage shown during a White House news conference with President Cyril Ramaphosa purported to show thousands of graves of murdered farmers. His assertion that a genocide of white farmers was taking place has been discredited. Ellio is the South African Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development.
There is no killing of white farms in South Africa. There is crime in South Africa like any other country, and this crime affects many people. In fact, it affects black people more than white people.
During the exchange, Mr. Ramaphosa calmly disputed Mr. Trump's allegations, saying he had come to Washington to discuss trade. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended his government's military defeated. Israeli forces controlled all of Gaza and the remaining hostages were brought home.
I am ready to end the war on clear terms that will ensure Israel's security. The hostages return home, Hamas disarms, and its leadership is expelled. We're implementing the Trump plan. Gaza residents who want to leave will be able to leave.
Mr. Netanyahu said plans for future aid to be distributed by private companies would give Israel another tool to win the war. The UN says a small amount of food aid allowed in this week is now being moved to bakeries, but is yet to be distributed. Canada, Uruguay and Spain are among the countries calling for accountability from Israel after Israeli soldiers fired shots near an international diplomatic delegation visiting the occupied West Bank. No injuries were reported in the incident. The Israeli military accused the delegation of straying from a previously agreed route and said the shots were fired into the air in warning. The president of the South American country of Guyana, Irfan Ali, has condemned plans by neighbouring Venezuela to hold elections in a disputed border region on Sunday. Venezuela has long claimed the Essequibo region. Here's Yusuf Taha.
Mr. Ali says he views the plans as a threat, which he takes very seriously. Essequibo citizens who vote in the polls will be charged with treason. The territorial dispute is before the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Earlier this month, it ordered Venezuela to suspend plans to extend its election to Essequibo. The row has intensified since ExxonMobil discovered massive offshore oil deposits.
The safety of a Kenyan activist and a Ugandan lawyer who've been missing after being arrested in Tanzania on Monday. Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Atahaire were trying to attend Monday's court appearance by the Tanzanian opposition leader. Spain and Portugal have asked the European Union to push for more power links between their countries and the rest of the continent. The request follows a massive power outage on the Iberian Peninsula last month, which plunged cities into darkness, halted trains and disrupted internet access. Lisbon and Madrid have frequently accused France of blocking their access to power from the other EU countries. Police in London have charged a member of the Irish hip-hop group Kneecap with a terror offence after he allegedly displayed a flag in support of the Lebanese group Hezbollah. Liam Ohana banned in the UK. Kneecap said the video has been taken out of context. Tottenham Hotspur have beaten Manchester United in an All-England final to win the Europa League. Brennan Johnson scored the only goal of the game in Bilbao shortly before half-time. Here's our sports reporter, Andy Swiss.
After so many years of frustration, at last, Tottenham secured their first trophy since 2008 on an emotional night. The match itself was poor, befitting two teams who've struggled so badly in the Premier League. Tottenham, despite their dreadful form domestically, will now play in the Champions League next season. Vindication for their under-pressure manager Ange Postecoglou. And for their fans, an evening of pure delight. For Manchester United, though, this defeat means they will not be playing in Europe next season.
BBC.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626.
Okay, man, to more Straight Talk here on your Bobo 103.1 FM radio dial and simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Moving into our final half hour, giving us about 22 minutes now at 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock before we have to sign off for another day. But the phone lines remain open, 745-2626. Of course, you can also reach out to us via our version of the 1-800 number, by calling our WhatsApp line, 928-2562. And from there, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message, and we will also add your comments. We were discussing as a last subject or most recent subject, the fact that public consultation has now been opened on the controversial airport expansion projects, plural, starting, of course, with the runway extension here at Owen Roberts International Airport. We've outlined the pros. We've also outlined the laundry list of cons, largely environmental, human health, and, of course, cost are among the risks of this project. The government is asking for your feedback, so we encourage folks, again, a little experiment of my own. Will the eco-activists be as outspoken on this as they were on cruise infrastructure? And will some of the proponents or the otherwise mouthpieces be likewise as, again, against this project as perhaps as it relates to our conscientious objectors in the country? Inquiring minds would like to know. 745-2626. And if I may be allowed, record-breaking sargassum influx begins to hit Cayman. And I point out sargassum, not sarcasm, which, again, could be easily misinterpreted. But just a few quick excerpts from the news headlines. After 2 years of relatively small amounts of sargassum seaweed washing ashore along Caribbean beaches, scientists say 2025 is on track to be a record laboratory, which used the end of April. The amount surpassed an all-time high recorded in June 2022, which led to businesses in Cayman, in particular in the eastern districts, reporting feeling under siege by the seaweed. This year at the Moritz Resort, quoted in the meeting that the resort has a seaweed removal program to keep beaches clean and to avoid sand loss. Also, over the long weekend, sargassum could be seen moving further down the shoreline. In addition to East End, it was starting to affect the southern coastline of Grand, otherwise known as sargassum, that inundated beaches across the Cayman Islands, all three Cayman Islands, is likely to be worse this year than in previous years. And the question is, obviously, how do we cope with it? Well, certainly the trash and deposit the sand back, but do we do it with any degree of regularity? But in particular, again, going back to that little bird who froze and fell out of the sky, not everything that at face value is bad may necessarily be considered bad for us. I've maintained, and this problem of sargassum, this phenomenon, as you will, sargassum, or seaweed as it's been known, can be used in agriculture, Mr. Farmer, as a fertilizer. Apparently, according to the EPA, and I quote, sargassum is widely regarded as a biofertilizer in agriculture. This nutrient-dense macroalgae is rich in minerals, is water-soluble, and has other compounds which collectively enhance soil health, quality, productivity, and enzyme activity. So, again, every year we host an agriculture show. Every year it is the highlight of the town, and for good reason. Certainly we talk about food sustainability. We've seen progress being made in the country in terms of, I guess, reinvigorating previously untilled agricultural land, and perhaps the notion or the concern surrounding food insecurity have prompted efforts to improve or increase our agricultural output. Perhaps it might be an opportunity for it off of our reused as agriculture for local agricultural stocks. How do you take a negative from Mother Nature and turn it into a positive?
Commercialize it.
Commercialize it, absolutely.
Well, to your point, I remember Mr. Franklin Smith, telling me, you also go through a grinding process and kind of liquefy it. That's another one. But, I said years ago when we talked about scholarships and giving out scholarships for young persons of their needs, and make sure that persons are going to be targeting their education and where we see some of those needs in the future. You also raised a couple of days, or again, here's another opportunity to do that. I say the same thing. So you got fertilizer potential, for example, with the sargassum or this aka seaweed. That's what I grew up calling it, the seaweed. Look at the green iguana problem. Like, why haven't we commercialized that yet? I'm thinking grinding up and making some wonderful dog food. I don't know. There's tons of opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And if you can commercialize it, I guarantee you that might help solve some of the problems. Everybody going out there and actually making $1 off of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I think it's clearly an entrepreneurial opportunity, and it's not going to be easy because before we can obviously derive the benefit of the sargassum coming to shore, you have to collect it. And once you collect it, then you have also from the EPA, if I can just find it, sargassum also harbors organisms, and ammonia, when sargassum begins to decay, can cause either mild to serious health effects, including respiratory illness, cardiovascular illness, and neurological illness. So it's not, 100% safe, but there again are measures that can be taken to make it safe. As we learned from COVID, the face mask, the ubiquitous face mask still works for not only pandemics, but arguably, bad smells.
I'd just like to state that would not apply to you and I because we grew up in the 80s.
That's right.
We're immune to
We are immune to it. We played with lead-based paint and didn't die. We drank water from a garden hose and didn't die. We played outside in the sunshine
oh my God.
and didn't die. But somewhere along the
we
lines...
used to go swimming with tons of seaweed.
Yeah, we did. It did. Apparently, all of these things today will kill us. So apparently the Y or the Z generation have just gotten softer.
Did I mention running behind mosquito
yes.
trucks?
Yes. And
the white
inhaling
plume.
the toxic, delicious fume.
Smelling the carbon monoxide from the back of a bus.
And
I'm still here.
Die. Knock on wood, because we don't want to tempt fate. They could just say, yes, you didn't die then,
so
but it crept up on you later in life.
I told you this, right? I used to run behind it. That was back when it was really white and fluffy. And then I'll never forget, I'm there in government. I can't remember whether I was elected or a civil servant, but I know I was coming out the back of the government administration building, which aka the glass house.
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I could be dying in a minute now, apparently, but anyway, she was talking about how dangerous it was and we needed to, change it out and put it into something new.
Well, again, the seaweed is going to be a problem.
A couple of years late.
It was a problem in 2022. It's expected to be a bigger problem in 2025. We have experience with it here in the Cayman Islands, so we know the smell is not nice, is not pleasant. We know, obviously, wading in it is not pleasant. We know that it, piles up on our shoreline, so it restricts those beach walks and other scenic events that tourists and locals obviously appeal to. So what do we do with it? Mother Nature is sending it our way, whether we're ready or not. So I think if we can start thinking of ways in which to turn this negative into a positive, we can not only combat Mother Nature's surprise visit of sarcasm, but it can actually make it work for us. It is an entrepreneurial opportunity because it's shore and washes up, or we try to, and as some hotels did, particularly in the eastern districts, but we saw it along the south coast of the Cayman Islands as well as the west coast, sea floor, which you can't do unless you have approval from the Department of Environment. And even if you do have approval, that approval doesn't come quickly, so it is not an immediate fix. I have seen in other parts of the world where vessels, much like the same beach cleaner, the inhabitants, the elected, I think it may be very well individual level, but there are, as reports continue to identify, billionaires and multimillionaires in our society. So do have the means to clean the beaches. Do they invest in the infrastructure for more vehicles to clean beaches island-wide and all three islands? Maybe. But the cost, and turn this otherwise seagrass into fertilizer or compost and put that back into the garden to yield better agricultural stock, if for any other reason, to feed those fields which grow the food that we otherwise import into this country. I think I read somewhere 90% of all that we consume food security is a major issue. I think Forbes very recently carried a whole issue on the issue of food security and what the United Nations is doing with it, as well as other global sustainable organizations, but that it's going to reach record levels. And we know all of the negative aspects of what it brings with it. It is a moan and groan and say, if 26 is the number, people oftentimes say, you guys just so easily criticize without providing solutions. Well,
who could have said something like
we heard you, and there you go. At least in 2 instances, we propose alternative solutions. Let's see if you agree with us. 745-2626 is that number. Again, we'd love to hear from you on ways in which to turn the negative of the potential and the expected sarcasm onslaught in 2025. How do we turn that into a positive? Well, you've heard our suggestion. We'd love to see whether you agree with us or if you have your own viewpoint on the subject. 22 for another day. I think this is a good opportunity to remind listeners again of the one guest we know we're going to have this week. We're excited about it, as a matter of fact. On Friday, we are going to
pull
share
over.
with you. Pull over. Anyway, stop. There is a new board game, a Caymanian-created board game that is certainly in market or in the market.
In the stores.
In the stores today, called Pull Over.
Pull Over.
And it's literally, from reading on social media anyway, it's a game linked to, obviously, speeding or otherwise traffic infractions. You can either be the driver or the cop. I don't know the whole premise behind the game, but I can guess. But certainly, to your point, we are going to find out on Friday by welcoming and highlighting, let's call it what it is, highlighting the ingenuity of another local resident for taking an idea past the old brain from the paper and put it into production. And it is a new board game.
And it is a Caymanian lady. Have you ever
proud of her?
This? It just wasn't something I'm thinking about, right?
I can think of a few improved dartboards. It's still the same game of dart, but you just change the background.
Yeah.
You know, possible motivation for throwing things that stick at people. But I digress. Yes.
I almost saw a picture there, like where you can change out the photographs.
Yeah. You know me so well.
Yeah.
But again, new game, Pull Over, and the creator will be our guest in studios on Friday at 4:30. Great stocking stuffer. But before that, you got hurricane season approaching. And again, according to forecasters, it's going to be another busy hurricane season. 17 named storms forecast, 4 of them expected to be major storms, that is Category 3 or higher. So in the event, buys list, because if the power does go out, just like Monopoly and other chess great board games, you too can play Pull Over.
Might be there
by candlelight, and it could again help pass the time.
I remember as a
when
kid
you got nothing else to do.
I remember as a kid being in school. We used to like rainy days, right? We used to play games.
We did.
We play games inside the classroom.
Again, as a kid, we used to go out to beach days when they said, "Do not go in the water." What did we do? Just the opposite. We took any piece of styrofoam or floaty. This is before surfing was king.
Car tubes.
Yeah, it was more of a beach wave riding or whatever. I remember doing that a lot. I used to look forward to those
funny you mentioned
styrofoam
days. Funny you mentioned styrofoam. I remember being on a big, huge piece of styrofoam, and this is how I actually learned not to use gas with styrofoam.
Oh, really?
For some reason, don't ask me, Austin.
I won't.
We were out in the middle of the ocean, big, huge piece of styrofoam, and somebody had gas. And now when you put gas in the styrofoam, it just try this at home, kids.
This was their Cuban experiment. Let's see, how do we do it? I mean, because they traverse treacherous territory on things that could hardly be described as boats. Maybe styrofoam was the early experiments, but yeah, don't mix styrofoam and gasoline. It's not a good idea.
But, thinking about that, one of the first things we discussed on this program was, the sad scenario of teenage homicide, or not homicides, suicides and so on, and the anxiety of kids.
Yeah, no,
it was coming to my mind the other day. Running.
I'm convinced of it.
Everything we did was outside.
Yeah. No.
Marbles.
Yes.
Chasing.
Vitamin D from Mother Nature's sunshine. Like all things, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, but not enough of it is, also a bad thing. We certainly didn't get enough. That's my point. We played outside, and obviously delicious fumes of both the MRCU mosquito truck and, of course, with
back of a bus.
gas stations and buses just for sheer enjoyment and didn't die. And we even drank from a garden hose and didn't die.
I remember having to
Our
go
generation
to,
is just stronger.
I remember having to go to Mr. Arthur's shop, the 7-Eleven, picking up kerosene oil.
How you mean?
Yeah, I had to take a couple whiffs of the kerosene oil.
Of course.
That used to go in the
Just so
lamps.
you know it's real.
This is the right stuff.
Nostalgic like that.
You know what they're going to say? Now I know what's wrong with those two guys.
Now, yes. You didn't die, but clearly it didn't,
Inhale
leave
too
the
many
mind.
fumes.
Example of, yes, they partook in their youth and they never exhaled. They kept it all inside.
Yeah,
and there were
we didn't
some effects, as they may say. 28 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, giving us about 55 seconds remaining. Ellio, any final and or closing remarks before we say farewell?
All I can say is if it did have some health issues, I've enjoyed the trip. I've enjoyed myself. So it's a pleasure being right here with you, buddy.
The pleasure is mutual, my friend. Always a pleasure to work with you. Delighted that we are once again back together again. And, of course, having the opportunity to make an impact in the public domain by engaging in conversations on the issues, as we used to say, that impact all of our lives, it into a positive.
Doing our best to educate, enlighten, and to elevate the public.
Indeed. That's all the time we have for you for today, but tune in again tomorrow for more Straight Talk at 4:30 p.m. right here only on Bobo 103.1 FM.
The home of the BBC World